Saturday, and that means it's supposed to be a heart-to-heart. What do you do when you shared everything about your life? And I pretty much shared everything there is to share about my personal life. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. And my heart-to-hearts in the next coming weeks are going to be geared towards survival heart-to-hearts. It's a passion of mine and it's an interest of mine. Survival living and living how to do without and saving money and budgeting and all these things. But how do I incorporate my heart-to-hearts into my survival videos? It's really easy because there's so many stories in the Bible about survival. In fact, most of the major stories in the Bible had to do with survival. And I think I'm going to share with you upcoming stories about how about Noah and how about Joseph and Noah and all of these characters in the Bible. And the number one thing was being prepared. We are to prepare our bodies, our minds, our souls for all kinds of things in life. I am really enjoying my survival series, and if you haven't watched them, I sure hope you give them a chance and a try because they're very unusual and they're very unique. But my perspective is one of not having fear, because what's fear gonna do? Fear in life paralyzes us, and when we have fear, we don't act upon it. We just become scared and we don't do anything. I see it more as a challenge and an adventure. Who doesn't see challenges and adventure as something to be fun? Having fun in a survival situation? How can that be? Well, I enjoy this kind of part of my life. I enjoy learning how to do things and thinking outside the box and not going to the store and buying it, but can I make it? I've always been that way. And I've always will be that way. It's just in my nature. But you know, in the Bible, especially Noah, we hear so many stories nowadays about we're living the days of Noah. You know, that's true. A lot of times, and most times, God does give us a warning. He gives us little nudges and says, hey, you should be doing this or you should be doing that. And I felt a calling. I felt like God was telling me at this part of my YouTube life is to share about surviving more, share about doing things without. And it's been a pleasure of mine to be able to do this. I started out easy on this. This is the first week, so this is not quite so extreme. I'm just like slowly easing everybody into some of the things that are going to be very interesting. I actually haven't seen anybody do some of the things that I'm going to be doing. That's not to say there isn't anybody, I just haven't seen it. And I'm the least likely that would be doing videos like these. I mean, look at me. I'm a middle-aged woman. I don't have any kind of skills and athletic skills whatsoever. But you know what? Don't underestimate people and don't see people by their cover. Let me share with you what I mean by that. There are many kinds of books in this world. You'll see a book that's really beautiful in the outside cover, all fancy and it's easy to look at. But once you read the book, it's like so boring inside. It's like, why am I reading this book? Then you have some really old classic books. You know, the books that have the leather binding, but they're not very fancy. In fact, they're very dull and drab. But you start opening up that book and you start reading the contents in it, and it's like it comes to life. Don't judge a book by its covers. And I always say that. Don't judge a person by their cover. Because look at me. Who would think that I would be doing survival videos? I mean, I don't have the muscles and I don't have the physique of somebody who's out in the wilderness and living in the survival. But you know, some of us girls and guys, we got a lot of brain smart. We got a lot of knowledge. But you know what, more important? I have livable knowledge. I live in a home that doesn't work. And I have to do, not just read, I have to do the things and able to have my life keep going on, in fact. It's survival. A lot of people couldn't do what I do, and I don't mean that to boast. It's just I've learned it and I live it, and I've lived it now 10 years. 10 years! It's so funny when I go places away and I wash my hands and I see all that water run down the sink and I think, oh no, what did you do with that water? And I realize, Tessie, you're probably one of the only ones around here that have to live the way you do. But in a survival situation, all of these things can be very beneficial because if our infrastructure goes down, for most people, that would be their city water, their city wells, their city sewer. All of those things are run by the city. And so it's really important if you have your amenities with the city, you got to think outside the box and you got to start thinking, how am I going to do things if things get bad? And maybe this is something that you're not interested in. Maybe this is something you find boring or you find frightening. It's not frightening at all. I know it's easy for me to say it because I live it, but you know, everybody, it's what you get used to in life. And if you get used to living a certain way, you get used to it, and it's not so hard. That's why I often wonder, and when things get bad, and if things get bad, what the Amish are going to do, because the Amish are going to be bombarded with all kinds of people coming and wanting them to help them, or I don't know what would happen. And I often think about the Amish and think about how their life could be turned upside down, because right now, the way the Amish live, it's very quaint. You know, people like to look on the outside, looking in and take pictures and think it's so neat. What happens if things would get to the point where we all had to live that way? It wouldn't be so quaint to the Amish anymore. It would be more like they gotta want what they have. I mean, think about it. If things would get bad and there would be no food, the Amish, everybody knows the Amish has food. Everybody knows the Amish lives without electricity. Everybody knows the Amish would have a lot of fuel on hand because they live without electricity. And so I do fear for the Amish in a way, because they were the ones that would be really targeted first. And so why I think that we shouldn't bug out is because bugging out to me is not going to serve any purpose. Now, if you would have to bug out, I understand that there's some situations where you would have to. Take, for instance, for me, I live near 3 Mile Island. Now, 3 Mile Island has closed down, shut down. They aren't making any more nuclear power, but yet there probably is nuclear power there. And so that would be a very unique scenario for me. But bugging out, I don't plan on doing that, because where would you go? Everybody says, well, they're going to bug out. Where are you going to bug out to? Because everybody else is going to be bugging out. And another thing is, when you get into a vehicle, how do you know you're going to get to your destination? There's going to be people robbing you, like robbing you along the way. You're going to be in traffic. Bugging out, to me, is a very stupid idea. And I know that's not very popular, but for me, I think it's to stay in your environment the most you can, stay where you're at the most you can, and that is where you're equipped to be. Not everybody's going to be able to bug out. And I wouldn't choose to bug out, because I think my calling is right here. You know, my husband talks a lot about, well, we should go up north and move in a secluded area. And while that is great, and I think that sounds amazing, I do believe that there are people that are being called to stay where they're at, and being called to be in amongst where the chaos is, because that's where the light is going to be for these people. And I don't believe in just running off into the woods as soon as things get bad. I believe that maybe sometimes we're placed in a certain part of our life, in a place so we can help others. I did a video 2 years ago about if people would come asking me for food. Number one thing survivors talk about, and preppers, oh, they would never share their food with anybody else. I'm opposite. I can't imagine living with myself and not sharing with what I have. Does that mean my life on this earth would be shorter? Of course it would. And my family would always come first. My grandchildren, number one. But after that, if somebody comes to me and in need, I would help them. I wouldn't maybe help them in the way that they would want to be helped. They would have to help me. They would have to work for it. They would have to be part of the community. I'm not just going to start handing out food to people simply because they were lazy and didn't want to do it. But yet I would help them, but I would make them help themselves. And so we walk a fine line when we're Christians, and we walk a fine line when we talk about survival, and we talk about, you know, being prepared. It is a fine line, because you take care of your family, but you don't hoard it for just your family, because that is part of Christianity, is sharing love to your neighbors. Jesus said, for the least of these. And so if you were thirsty, you gave a drink of water. If you were naked, you should be clothed. You know, Jesus said, do it unto the least of these. And that is a commandment. And that's a commandment I have to follow, even though it may hurt me in the long run. We're not on this earth just to be on this earth. We're on this earth to make an impact on it. And that's why I think it's important for me to do these survival videos, because I want to make an impact. There are hundreds and hundreds of people have been following my channel all these years. And when this pandemic hit, they were prepared because they watched my videos. The reason I know this is because I get emails and letters every week telling me how they've done things, and they can't believe it, but it's come true. And now they don't feel so panicky anymore. These aren't just women in their 20s and 30s. These are actually women in their upper 70s, and I have one in her upper 80s that's going back to the old school, and she's finding fulfillment and joy and a sense of being. She's finding a sense of belonging, and that's what everybody looks for in life. They look for a reason to be here, and by just taking care of yourself and learning survival skills, then it gives you reason to wake up in the morning. Some people would find that statement rather pathetic. You know, waking up in the morning, the reason for canning is to wake up in the morning. Yeah, that's the reason for living, is to do the things that we enjoy and to do the things that we're called to do. As women, we're called to be mothers and wives and grandmas. As women, we're called to do women things, and sometimes we do manly things as well. I mean, a lot of times you comment at me on the hard gardening work that I do and the hard labor that I do. But we're called to do these things. And if you're a man, you're called to do things that you're called to do as well. And you find great purpose in life. The number one thing that hurts my heart the most is when we become empty nesters and our children move away and they have families of their own. We feel like we have no purpose in life. I often tell people my mother was a go-getter. My mother was a perfectionist. My mother did everything. But when the children all moved away, she felt like she didn't have a meaning. Even though we tried to instill that in her, that we still need her, my mother seemed to lose her purpose. And when she lost her purpose, she lost her will. And when she lost her will, it's when her life started going downhill. I don't care if you're 5, 25, 55, or 95. You have a purpose on this world. You have a purpose in life. Whatever you can do in life, do it to the best of your ability, and you will find your life is quite enjoyable. Take care, everyone. God bless you, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.